recording.
This meeting is being recorded.
All right, so we'll jump in and get started. Starting off here, I just wanted to give a little overview about South Florida Tech Hub for those that aren't familiar. I know that this has been distributed far and wide thanks to our strong participants, and we're very excited about that. So we do have core initiatives with South Florida Tech Hub. Our mission is to continue to build upon the tech hub that is present in South Florida and ever growing. So we are very proud of the ability to do that. We do have different core initiatives, so talent being a big focus, and obviously today the talent aspect is something that we're focusing on. So we have subcommittees from K through 12, higher education, and boot camps. I don't know why boot camps isn't specifically listed, but we will make the change to that straight away. Brand, community, and then also for startups. So these are all of our committees. So you can see that we have a wide variety of ways to connect with the community. So all of our members are able to join committees. So whether or not you're a school, organization, or even there's opportunities to be an individual member of Tech Hub, there are a lot of great resources that are available for you. I know that there's a lot of students on the call, and we do have a student discount as well. So I can happily provide that as well. And then we also have peer groups that are available for members too. So this is a great way to get additional resources, events, conversations that get started with industry leaders in the field, and just different people that have very valuable organizations, conversations, and ways to get involved and plugged in the community. So here are some of our partners. As you can see, they range from top enterprise corporate companies in the area all the way down to startups. So we're really proud of this fact because it enables us to represent the wide variety of the tech community. So this is a great way also to see how you can get plugged in and engaged. For the students on this call, we love to be able to retain top talent in South Florida. So our full list of the membership can be found on our website, but anytime we have the ability to connect, we also promote jobs that are available on our newsletter and on our website. So as you're looking for jobs and internships, we're a great resource to help you along that journey. Okay, and just to give a snapshot of the job openings and opportunities in South Florida, as you can see, there are so many ways to get plugged in, and being able to continue your time and involvement in South Florida and start careers here or continue your careers here. There are a lot of opportunities to be able to do that. Okay, any questions about Tech Hub before we dive into the meat of the actual program and workshop today? All right, so we are thrilled to have such a great panel available for you today. Their insight and knowledge is so wonderful. I really respect everyone that's here today and so grateful for them to give up time in their busy schedules. So without further ado, I will go ahead and give each panelist the opportunity to give a little bit about their background and tell everyone what their companies and jobs that they have currently. So I will hand it over first to Lexi. I'm gonna pin you really quickly as well. Let's see if I can. I may have needed to do that beforehand. So I'm gonna stop and then reshare really quickly. I'm gonna spotlight you.
Oh, there I go.
Yeah, yes.
I see myself. This is great.
This is a great new tool here. So Nikki, thank you for that. I don't know how I did not know this beforehand. So this is great.
And for anybody that's watching, depending on what view you're in the top right, the little button that says view, to be able to see all the speakers, you've got to be in, you have to be in speaker view if you want to get away from seeing everybody in the gallery.
All right. So Lexi, I will hand it over to you.
Awesome. Thank you, Ashton. I'm really excited to be here, guys. My name is Alexis Braddy. I go by Lexi. I currently work for General Electric. I am the HR leader for our digital workplace, which houses all of our product managers, software engineers, architects, our cyber group across the United States and some parts of the global portions as well. I'm also responsible for building our part of our pipeline for our internship and DTLP program, which might interest some of you on this call. So definitely feel free to reach out and connect, because that is the pipeline to our leadership group. I've been in recruiting and HR for about 7 years. So I've had international recruitment in the tech space and national recruitment across the United States. And now I'm willing to help just really build out that pipeline for GE in the technology function, as well as building our technology talent management group and helping our tech and employees grow within the company for individual leadership opportunities or managing a team. So that's me.
Wonderful. Thank you for being here. I will hand it over next to Darie.
Hey, everyone. I don't know if I'm being highlighted. I'm still seeing the same screen.
I should have, let's see here. I'm going to share, stop share really quickly.
I see all four when I'm in the speaker view.
Okay. Oh, and it says you're spotlighted. So maybe it's just from an individual perspective, because I get to see you as well.
Okay. Yes. Cool. Awesome. I can see it. I can see it. I see it now. Nice picture. Okay. My name's Darie. I'm from Haiti. Nikki's laughing. I am the founder of Synchronized Technologies, which is we are a dev and advisement agency, work with non-technical founders to help them launch the lovable products, right? Minimal lovable product. We don't use the term MVP because it's outdated. If you're doing one thing, you have to do it well. So we spend a lot of time trying to help with people that need the most help to get software or apps and websites out there. I also teach part-time at Boca Code, where I'm also the chief dance officer and chief happiness officer. So I'm responsible for people's happiness. And you might see me on Instagram and TikTok doing some dance moves. I love making a fool of myself. And I'm an ambassador, also an ambassador at Tech Hub. And I think recently I also took on the title of chief happy hour officer. So all the happy hours I help manage. I have a whole bunch of fancy titles, none of the money to show for it, but super connected in the community. And I love being here. I'm an engineer by trade. I went to school for software engineering, and I've worked at this for the better part of the last 2 decades. I've built things that nobody used to system that process billions. So wherever advice I can give here would probably be drawn from some of those.
Awesome. Thank you. And also for the superstar volunteer that Darie is, he was pivotal in the volunteers for our recent South Florida DevCon, SoFlo DevCon. It was a really great event. We had about 1,000 people there. So for those of you in the future, it's an annual event. So keep an eye on that for next year, but extra thanks to Darie. Okay, up next is Diane.
Hi, everyone. I'm Diane. I'm the Associate Vice President of Talent here at Modernizing Medicine, ModMed. I'll say both you, Lexi, and Darie are very difficult people to follow, very impressive. And I'm really thankful to be meeting both of you as well. My role, I've been with Modernizing Medicine now for almost 11 years. So I have been part of growing the company from a talent perspective since I joined. At that time, we had about 20 or 25 team members. Flash forward, we're just under 1,500 team members today. So kind of high growth software as a service company right here in Boca Raton. I even as recently as this week, we hired somebody who's a relo from New York, and she was like, how do you hire in Boca Raton? I'm like, we have built a company in Boca Raton. I mean, certainly we have a lot of talent that lives, across the US and even globally today. But we certainly have a strong base here in Boca, and there's no shortage of talent for sure. My background, actually, I was a software developer very early on in my career as well. I still like to get a little bit nerdy, but my kids are much better at it now than I am, and they think I'm very tech inept, which is kind of funny and humorous and humbling at the same time. But certainly have really been, my career is really focused on that marriage of talent and technology, and I love the tech space, and so that's my background.
Thank you, Diane. And Diane is another super volunteer. Anytime we ask for participation, she comes to events. And so we're very grateful for her. Last but certainly not least, we have Nikki Cabus. So Nikki is our CEO for South Florida Tech Hub. She is probably the most modest person I know. So getting her to be able to agree to do this is wonderful. I will let her tell everyone about her background also in recruiting. So I think she's a perfect way to be able to tie all this together.
Well, thank you, Ashton. Yeah, because, I always tell them it's you guys that are the important people, but this is something that is definitely a soft spot because being a, well, I guess I was going to say previous, but still a hiring manager and a previous hiring manager for some larger companies, and also working in talent placement. I was in business development for both healthcare and technology in previous positions. And actually, something I was thinking about it, I never talk about it because I did it very briefly in my life. I was also a both preschool teacher and a high school teacher. I taught high school for 1 year. That was about all I could take of that. So I give a shout out to high school teachers. But yeah, I mean, as Ashton said, I'm CEO of South Florida Tech Hub, previous business development in staffing companies. For me, this is such a soft spot because you always hear at almost every single event, there's not enough talent. There's a gap in talent. All the talent's leaving. Everybody's looking for talent. They want to educate talent. There's almost 90% of the discussions we have are talent based. And so I think this is something that is going to continually always be a topic of discussion, but I think we're getting closer and closer to actually having some solutions and resolving some of the issues that we've had, just because it is always a topic of discussion. And of course, today is important because now that we're being able to retain more of our talent here, attract people to South Florida, now it's all about getting them jobs. So I'm just excited about today's discussion.
Wonderful, thank you. And so moving into the main programming part of today's workshop, we wanted to focus on the opportunity to take advantage of the panelist knowledge, information. And so what we've done, we've prepared 10 interview and negotiations based questions. We wanted to include negotiations into the conversation because this is something that typically is not necessarily focused on. And so we really hope that that provides value, especially to entry-level participants on this call as you're starting the workforce, to keep that in mind as you're having those discussions. But we wanted to have this open, really have the ability to connect there. And then after that, we did compile, thanks to the panelists, they sent along their best advice for interviews and negotiations. So we have that in this presentation that we'll touch on as a wrap up. And then the last 10 minutes will also be for question and answer from the audience. So if you don't want to forget your question along the way, feel free to drop it in the chat, but we will address that at the end of the presentation. So jumping right in, our first question for the panelists, and feel free to chime in whatever way, and then we'll go from there. But the first question is, what do you look for someone that is interviewing, and what impresses you from the get-go, from that first impression?
I think what I look for is somebody who really has done the research, kind of knows the role that they're interviewing for, has some sense of the company and what we do. I think that's because that they're taking this search seriously, and I think having a candidate who's done that research, they're going to be thoughtful. If they're thoughtful about their job search, they're also thoughtful about the work that they're doing. It's also just a really good sign. I think, and then, certainly those just professional social skills that we look for. I think those are important, but really the research is key for us.
Great, thank you. Anyone else want to dive in on the panelist side of things?
Sure. I can dive in. I think most of the time when I'm interviewing, I'm looking for authenticity. As an engineer, I've mostly only interviewed people that were gonna be doing some sort of software engineering role. We have ways to test, which I've always found an issue, because it's really hard to gauge someone's ability to code in an hour or in a day, right? It's usually, once you start working with them, you realize within 2 weeks whether they're really good or they're really bad. Now, giving them a whole bunch of word problems, as in for the engineers in the room, you know this very well. Maybe you're a bad interview taker, right? But if we can have a conversation where I can see sort of your personality, who you are, I think that's very impressive. And interviews themselves can sometimes be sort of clunky and nerve-wracking, right? If we can like pull it back and just talk, and seeing the way that you think is much more important to me than your skills. That attitude can be taught, but skills definitely. So I very look for that.
I would say for me, sorry. I think what Diane and Darie said were spot on. I think about it previously before I was an adjunct professor for quite a few years. And typically when I tell early career talent that I'm mentoring within GE, when they ask me about how do I land that next promotion or what I need to do, they either focus on one component or another. Either they focus solely on interviewing or just on their resume. And I'm like, remember when you were in school and you got the syllabus and they had a breakdown of like 30% is going to be based on homework and 40% is going to be based off of the final exam or 10% attendance. You have to look at the interview process the same exact way. From the very first time that you come in contact, all of that adds up to that 100%, that A that says, hey, I want to give this person an offer. So you have to make sure that your resume, although it may count for 25% or 30% because it gets you the interview, you want to make sure that the advice that Diane and Darie are sharing with you and that we're all sharing with you today, that you'd make that a part of the equation. Follow up and do those additional little things that people typically don't do in terms of responsiveness, in terms of approachability. And I think that's what will truly distinguish you from someone that's, okay, I think I can be swayed either way, to someone that we really want to extend an offer to.
Yeah, for me, so I agree with all of you, but it's funny because you half stole my thunder, Diane. So I was actually thinking the exact same thing, but I wanted to kind of add to yours, was that I think because everybody's told, right, do your research, know the company, but you still get people that still walk in blindly and have no idea about the company, and you ask them, hey, what do you know about the company, or tell me about this, and you could tell they just either don't know the answer, they just BS it, you can tell. But what I wanted to add to that, and I'm actually going to use an example, is I don't know if she's listening or not, but Nadia, one of our newest interns, she not only researched the company, and again, this is for an internship role. So if somebody did this for like a full-time job, it would like overly impress me. But I was so impressed by her that afterwards, I literally did a post on LinkedIn just about her interview skills, because what she did is she not only researched the company, she literally wrote me up. Like it was like a 3-page, like, look, I looked at your website, I looked at your podcast, I looked at this, and this is how this comes across to me. These are some ideas that I had. If I got this opportunity to work for you, this is how I would change this, and this is how it would help you. So I immediately was like, well, crap, I got to hire her now, because she not only knows everything about us, but she's already giving me like what I need to do. And I'm like, so I was sold like in the first 10 minutes. I didn't even have to see, I mean, after the interview, she sent me her little proposal and everything, but she sold me in the first 5 minutes because she not only knew the company, she literally came in with a, like, can I open my laptop and show you what I've learned about your company just from what you have out there? So I was like uber impressed. That's for me what caught my attention, like right from the get-go.
That's awesome.
Absolutely. And Nadia, who gets also on the call, they're absolute rock stars.
Yes.
And I'm sure even the panelists and those that are beyond entry level, of when Nikki told me that story, I was like, whoa, keep that in mind for the future. And even if it's more formal, I thought about it as well. If you don't feel as comfortable bringing in your laptop, you could always print it out in advance, like if it is in person. So something to consider as well. All right, thank you. Those were unbelievable examples. And we'll jump into this. I wanted to have some specifics too, and not just the general ones, but this one might be a little tougher. But what's the hardest interview question that either you personally have been asked or that you ask to candidates? If any come to mind.
At this one because it's the most anticipated question. We know it's coming, but people are still unsure of how to prepare or how to answer it. And it's the tell me about yourself question. People get so frightened by that and they're like, what do I say? How do I say it? So I learned this trick. This is not my own, and I'll share it with you here. It's super quick and easy. Just think of it as past, future, and present, right? If you're like, what do I say to tell me about yourself? This will help knock out, tell me what you want to do in 5 years. It'll help address some other areas as well. And then they'll just probe. So when they say, tell me about yourself, just tell them what you've done in the past. Time it at 2 minutes max. Say, I'll use myself as an example. Previously, before I worked in HR, specifically focused on talent acquisition. Ideally, in the future, I really see myself aligned to a company that does XYZ. Ideally, I would like to be a people leader in HR, but right now I'm really focused on making sure I develop my skills around X, Y, and Z. So you're telling them really on a high level what you've done in the past, what you're looking for in the future, which addresses what you want out of them and what you desire out of yourself for your career goals, and then why you're presently excited about the opportunity, what really drove you into this particular role. So that's, I think, one question, no matter what industry you're in, you're gonna get it, but everyone is so frightened by that question. So I just wanted to share that here with you guys today.
I love that. That is certainly spot on.
That's an awesome response. I think
Mm-hmm.
that is such great advice, I have to say, and I think it's really
If you are on the call and not a speaker, if you could go on mute, that would be wonderful.
It's funny. So yeah, I think that really showcases, a lot of what we ask in that initial screen. What I was thinking about when I saw that question too was the hardest question was actually probably the best question. When I left South Florida, I moved to San Diego, and this was before I became a recruiter. I was a software developer, and somebody sent me out on a job. This is a long time ago, for a job that I wasn't qualified for. And so and then in that job, Darie, to your point, like they gave me a Java test, but I was not a Java programmer. So that was like the hardest question that I had, because it clearly wasn't a fit for me. I sat down, I'm like, you want me to do this? Okay, like this isn't a fit. And I carried that with me into my recruiting career too, because that alignment, it has to be a fit. And so if there's a question that's too hard, then maybe it's not really the right role too. So
That's a good point. That's a good point.
Nikki, Darie, I know that they hit it on the head, but if you do want to have anything to add, go for it, or I can jump right ahead to the next question. But Darie, you went off mute, so perfect.
Yeah, so the question is, what's the hardest question I've been asked interviewing? I have twofold here. The hardest question is, if you're an engineer, is lead code hard questions. What that means is extremely hard questions that you have to write a program for that has nothing to do with anything you would be doing for the job. It's just like they're testing you really hard to see how you think. And I think it's absolutely pointless. But I think as of late, there is a question I've been asking that really has set the tone for the interview itself. Whenever I interview anywhere or talk to people, is about diversity and inclusion. Right. And I would ask that threefold. It's Does your sort of employee pool reflect the people that you're serving? That's one. Does your management reflect the employee pool? And more importantly, does is the diversity and inclusion part of the decision-making process of the company? This sometimes has the ability to completely can the interview. It's just like, it could either go really south, well, or stumble. And I think, to me, this has been the hardest question out of late.
Yeah, I would agree with all of you. I mean, I don't know if I have too much to add to that because my immediate thought, Lexi, was what you were asking, is I think a lot of people don't know how to answer that question. I think they also struggle with when you ask, tell me about yourself, they're like, well, do you mean personally, professionally? Do you want to know? And a lot of those personal questions, they're not even supposed to ask during an interview. So people just don't know how to answer that. But I do think that putting a little bit of your personality into that answer so that the employer knows kind of who they're getting, not only your skill set, but like being okay to mention some of those things. And a lot of times in an interview too, at least for me, it's been a lot of the personal connection to the person that I'm interviewing with, because I can answer all this things the right way and say, okay, I've got this skill, I've got this experience, I can do this. Yes, I can. But if you're making a personal connection to the person talking to you and you're having a conversation, for me, that's always really helped me in interviews to be able to bring out something personal and connect with them. But that leads me to probably another tip about this question is know who you're interviewing, because a lot of people have no idea. And then they get in the room and they don't know if they're talking to the CEO, their person who's going to be their boss, maybe the HR person first, like they have no idea. So I think making sure that you ask ahead of time, who am I going to be interviewing, with first? Is there multiple interview process, knowing kind of what to expect? I think that also will help you know how to answer that question, because depending on who you're talking to, I might change that answer. That's my advice for that one.
I want
Really
to add
great.
slightly to this, Nikki. I think Johnson just mentioned something that's extremely important. Like, interview is weird in a way because we've been taught our whole life to not toot our own horn, and unless you're talking about interviewing where you're supposed to be talking yourself up. So we conditioned to not talk about ourselves. But having an elevated pitch, like, work on that. Having that, as an entrepreneur, you have the 30-second, the minute, the 2-minute, 5-minute pitch. Like, trying to come up with something like this for yourself that talks about you really shortly, not what's in your resume, right? Because the interviewer can read your resume, things that maybe add on to this, or that makes you trying to make yourself look as attractive as possible to get that job. So when you ask that question, it's true. Especially, I find it extremely hard when I go to places where I have to talk to multiple people, especially networking events. And every person I meet, I tell about myself. I wish there was a platform where I get to stand, talk about myself that once. Everybody hears it, forget about it, right? But it's good practice, right? Have that little thing ready, like elevator pitch, 2-minute, awesome.
And I would just add to, like, connecting that to the company that you're interviewing with, or the role.
I'm getting really bad feedback. Are you guys also?
Yes.
I'm hearing it.
If you are not a speaker, if you can go on mute, that would be great.
I believe it's coming from Dario.
I will be able to mute. Okay, perfect. But I think I accidentally muted Diane.
Yeah,
Okay, perfect.
In an interview process, tailoring your pitch, like connecting it to the role and kind of the company mission. For us, we're on a mission to make healthcare work better, and so, having some connection to kind of what you're interviewing for, I think is really key too. And personalizing, you said it too, being authentic. I think, like, really authentically representing yourself and why you think this position is something that you're interested in. So.
Great, awesome, thank you. Okay, so the next question is, what is your most memorable interview, either as an interviewer or as an interviewee? Nikki, I know you already talked about that, but Lexi, Diane, Darie, any that come to mind? It's okay if no. I know this is a tough one.
Can you repeat the question?
Sure. It's what was your most memorable interview, either as an interviewer or even as an interviewee? If, say, for instance, someone asked you something great that you were like, wow, I didn't even think about that, or I need to be prepared for that in the future.
Sure. I have both actually. So let's start with me being the interviewer. So as an engineer, a lot of time you hear everybody knows someone who knows the code, and that usually means someone who's good with computers. That usually means they sort of mess around computers. I was in one of my early ventures looking for an engineer to help me, and my cousin was telling me for a long time his high school friend is really good at computers. And I was like, after maybe months of telling me this, I was like, fine, I need someone I interview him. So at this time, I'm meeting this person who's 18, and we started talking. I had a list of questions for him that I thought would have taken me like the whole hour. And within the next 15 minutes, he was over all the questions. I realized the person I was talking to was not at that level that I thought they were, right? It took me 7 years to get where I was. At 18, they were already there, And I was like, oh my God, we spent the next 2 hours talking about technology. I was like, where have you been my entire life? Like, this is amazing. This is incredible. I came in thinking that, and his name is Brian already, yeah? I came in thinking that, is this going to be a quick conversation? And I'm just going to ask you a few questions. And the level of conversation we had technically, that was one of the times I was like mentally, technically challenged by someone. I was extremely incredible. The same thing happened on the reverse side. I was joining a company. I was supposed to talk to an architect, me as the interviewee. I was supposed to talk to the architect for 45 minutes. And I think within 30 minutes, we had gone over every question he had for me. And I had asked him, what is keeping you up at night? I believe that he told me what the biggest challenge the company was facing at the time. And we were supposed to talk 45 minutes, right? We spent the next 3 hours solving that problem on that call. And he was like, I don't know what happened. I want you in my team. I didn't accept the offer, but it was like one of those conversations. I was like, wow, this was so great, right? We both had the time and sat down and talked about something that we both interested in. That's it for me.
Wonderful examples.
I think I have something really quick on the opposite. I just interviewed with a FANG company about 2 months ago, and I went through their entire interview process and received an offer. And one of the things that they asked me, I didn't have an answer to. And it typically happens in interviews. And I was just honest with them and said, I wasn't prepared for that question. And I think sometimes people are hesitant to say that, oh, I'm unsure, I don't know. And what they do is they kind of stumble and try and think of something at the same time. And then they ramble. And then what happens is that person begins to tune out, right? And so you've lost them instead of just saying, oh, wow, I really wasn't prepared for that question, right? I don't have an immediate answer for that, but give me a second to think about it. Doing that is okay. And people should get comfortable asking for a pause or asking to come back to that. It didn't stop me from receiving an offer. It's never stopped me from receiving an offer. So I just want to put that out there, that it's memorable. And I've never had a hiring manager that I've worked with never say, I'm not going to extend this person an offer because they asked for a pause. I have had hiring managers come back and say, I don't want to extend this person an offer because they were all over the place and they weren't very clear in their answer. So get comfortable with saying, you caught me off guard, that's okay. And that speaks back to that authenticity, right? Of being able to say, I don't know. And it lets them know, hey, this person, if they need help or have a challenge, I can teach them. They'll be open with me. I know that I can work with this person. I can develop them. So it gives a lot of hints. So I'll just at that point, that was my most memorable one because I was like, oh snap, I'm going to go to the default. I just don't have an answer, and let me work through it and talk through it. And they appreciated that. And it did not stop me from receiving an offer. I just love GE. I couldn't go.
Love that.
Yeah.
Okay, Diane, if there's nothing that comes specifically to mind, I will go ahead and jump into the next question.
Sounds good.
Okay, so similar to the question that was answered before, or that Lexi brought up before with the elevator pitch, tell me about yourself. Do you all ask applicants what their strengths and weaknesses are? And if if the participants on this call should also think about that in advance.
I never ask that question. I really don't. I think it just feels inauthentic, and people are going to say, oh, I work too hard, or, something like that. It's just, I don't think it really adds a lot of value to the interview process. Some people may ask it and they may have a different take on that. The question that I asked the most, and my team would laugh because they know that this is my favorite question, is tell me what you're most proud of, tell me your most significant accomplishment. And then that really, to me, and that just opens the door to one, get to know the person better. What are their motivations? Kind of understand what they have accomplished. It could be an academic, it could be career related, it may be volunteer, it may be something completely like, I put myself through school while supporting a family of 5, and all of these things. And it's just such an insightful question. So that's my go-to for sure.
I agree with you. I agree with you, Diane. I think it's such an outdated question that leads to inauthentic, conversations. Cause it's just, you almost have to be prepared to give a white lie. Cause it's kind of like, well, do you really want to know my weakness? I think it's just such a terrible question. And for me, I'd rather just have a conversation. So I know I often will ask questions about what are things that you enjoy doing? Or like you said, what are something that you're really proud that you've done at a past job? Or I think those are things that lead to a conversation that you can tell naturally what somebody's good at just by it's something that they're proud of, or it's something that they like doing, or that, I don't really like the stereotypical strengths and weaknesses question either.
Yeah.
I love that. I wasn't expecting those answers. So I think that's great.
Yeah, I always ask that, and you have to have 20 of them listed, both strengths and weaknesses. Of course, I'm joking. I think this should be banned from being asked in interviews. Why would you ask me this? I usually, similar to Diane and Nikki, I usually ask, but on the tech side, what is something that you're excited about? And from there, I can okay, so what are you doing there? And we can talk about your contribution to that thing. You usually get a good sense for what the person did and how much they worked, and talk about technology in general. I truly feel like interview shouldn't be sitting down, you and me. It should be like, let's go to a restaurant somewhere, let's play golf, whatever. Let's play ping pong as we just have a conversation. So be laid back, so you could be yourself. You could feel more at ease to talk about a thing that you do. But it's not always possible, of course. So having conversation like that, things that what gets you going? Tell me something interesting about you,
Yes.
And then I can pick up pulling that thread until we get somewhere. I'm like, wow, that's impressive.
I love that point too, Darie, just about what motivates you, because I know I've always said personally, and I'll use myself as an example, but I've always, before I got into tech, I was in healthcare, right? And I've always been in very stereotypical sales positions. And I've always been one of those people that's won the little, glass trophies or trips to wherever, all expenses paid trips for being the top salesperson, whatever. But, I've been forever wanting to get in more of a role like I am now versus just a very stereotypical sales role, because just because I'm good at something doesn't mean I like it. I've always stereotypically been very, very good at sales, but it's just because that was my job and that's what's put in front of me. And I'm just one of those people that's going to be an overachiever or whatever. But it doesn't mean that I loved it. And so I started reaching a point as I got older and older in my career that I was like, I'm really miserable actually. And so that's actually why I left, the industry I was in and my, my previous jobs, is just because I wanted something new. And I didn't want to be stuck in the same role. Because again, I was good at it. If I had to answer it in an interview, that would be my strength. But it doesn't mean that that's all I want to do, or that it even motivated me, or that I loved that.
Yeah. If I could add something super quick, I agree with all of the answers here by my fellow panelists, but the reality is you guys are probably going to get somebody who's going to ask you, what are your strengths and weaknesses? They don't share our same thought process behind that question. So just a super quick word of advice. If just is really simple, if you do get, an interviewer that, has that kind of old way of thinking, and they ask you, what are your strengths? Just be mindful to tie it to the job description, right? As much as possible. So try to highlight something that you're good at, that you excel at, that's tied to the job description, because then they can see you in that role if you can speak to that, right? It can see, oh, okay, oh, okay, well, that aligns with what I'm looking for in a candidate. I would say on the weaknesses side, don't pick anything that's tied to the job description. Have it be true, right? But just make sure that you're not saying you have great attention to detail, and then your resume has, misspellings and such, right? And I'm like, you can't have great attention to detail. Did you look at his resume, or did he see, just those little small things? So I just wanted to add that, because I know that it'll probably still happen to most of you guys. So just tie it back to the job description.
Lexi, what I've seen used effectively is when you say the weakness and also say what step you've taken to address that. Right.
Say it for it again, Darie.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I just missed you.
Perfect. Okay. I'm sorry. I was saying, like, what I've seen being used to effective measures is when you share that weakness and say what step you've taken to address that, right away. Like, hey, like, I tend to speak very fast. I have been taking public speaking classes to teach me how to slow down, and over the past 7 years, it's been a struggle, but I've made significant progress. I understand what it is. I know I have a plan, so that, it shows that he's super aware of sort of what's going on.
That's a good point.
Definitely. Okay, so we're gonna jump in to the last two questions and then just do a quick oversight for the tips, so that I'm sure people, I've already seen some questions in the chat. So to get your all's advice directly, I'm sure is gonna be helpful. So this one's kind of tough, and hopefully someone's not in this position in the future, but it does happen. And I know that has been something that people could slip up on. So if you have had a candidate that has been fired, has gaps on their resume, or has been let go in the past, what is your advice for the best way to go about that?
Honesty. You have to be honest. I mean, like Lexi was saying earlier, is that a lot of people don't prepare for some of those questions that they should expect to get, the harder questions. And if you don't prepare and you just BS your answer, they can tell. So if you do have a gap, if you have been fired, somebody more than likely, 99% of hiring manager, HR directors are going to ask you about that. So make sure that you're prepared to answer it. Be honest, because people can tell most of the time if you're lying. And to Darie's point earlier is, I'm thinking of a specific interview that I've had with somebody, and I did notice a pretty large gap in their resume, but she was honest with me and said, and I'll tell you the example because obviously you guys don't know her, but she actually had a gap of about 2 years. And I don't know if it's like me, I have a gap for 2 years because of maternity leave. I stayed home with my kids until I decided to go back. So, I mean, there's explanations for it, but I'd asked her what had happened during that time period. And she was very honest in saying, look, I had an issue with drug and alcohol abuse. I put myself into a halfway home. She goes, I'm completely clean, and I've been clean now for an entire year. She's like, this is what I'm doing to keep myself, on the right track and so on. And then she just went on and on to talk to me about all her skills and whatever. And I so much appreciate, for me, I mean, maybe more than some, the average person, for me, honesty is huge, especially in an interview like that I actually overappreciated her answer. I hired her almost because of it. She had all the skills that I needed, but when it came to comparing her to somebody else, I'm like, well, if she can tell me that in an interview, she's going to be that type of employee going forward. So that actually showed me a lot about who she was as a person. And needless to say, that's when I used to be a medical spa director. When I left, I recommended for her for my position, and she ended up getting it. So, I mean, I just think honesty is the best answer.
And I would say too that self-awareness, because that certainly has come up when I'm interviewing people. And I think what I look for, because look, I mean, some of the best people I know have been fired from jobs. I mean, like, it happens, but usually when they're fired, that's probably like the best thing that's ever happened to them, because it, they learned something, like it showed them that maybe they were in the wrong career or whatever the case might be. So if you can tie that experience into like a learning opportunity. And when I was thinking about this panel this morning, I was thinking about like, wow, that emotion, we hear about emotional intelligence, self-awareness, like that is such a crucial skill set in the workplace today. Like, and it's a journey, like nobody's like fully self-aware or emotionally intelligent. Like we all have work to do there, but I think being able to connect, like, okay, this happened, this was my role, take responsibility, what you learned, how you incorporated that learning and moving on is really helpful. And most people like Nikki will take that, like, you want to be able to trust that the person you're bringing into your organization, that you can trust what they say, that, you can trust them with the role, and I think that it's really key to be honest and also showing what you got out of it.
Mhm. Yeah.
Really great. I think you guys hit it on the head. And Lexi and Darie, if something doesn't come to mind because of time, I'll just jump into the last question. I skipped 3 just because the panelists were so great and proactively answered them. So when you see that on the presentation, just know that. But also too, I might even just eliminate them. But one of the last questions, because I know we have a lot of people on the panel that are transitioning out of graduation and college, and it might be their first time job. So what advice do you have for entry-level applicants that may not have that prior experience yet?
Oh, I love this question. Can I go first?
Of course.
So for me, please, and Darie knows, he's probably heard me say this before, but for me is you have to get internships, volunteer, you have to get involved in the community. There has to be something on your resume other than your certifications, other than your 4-year degree, other than just your schooling. I mean, I know for me, I purposefully, so you guys might laugh, but what I do a lot of times when I get a resume is I literally turn it over and I look at the bottom to see what are their extracurricular activities. I want to see, do you volunteer for this? Do you, I don't know, if they have projects they're working on, what are their interests? Like, I literally have at the bottom of my resume different volunteer opportunities. Even now as an adult, I put like team soccer mom on there because that's a job. And so I put all of that on my resume. And the thing is if you legitimately don't have experience, I mean, I've gone to schools, to colleges and universities and talked to them about this, and I've gotten hand raises. Well, I didn't get paid to do that. It doesn't matter. If you helped organize something, if you volunteered during a hurricane, you had to organize all the volunteers, if you, whatever you did, or if you're volunteering, doing what you want to do for a living, but you're just doing that in a volunteer aspect, put that on your resume. It doesn't matter if you got paid or not. It's just as important. It's just the same amount of experience as somebody else that's getting a paycheck for it. But that's my advice. That's the biggest thing I can say.
I saw you have student memberships at Tech Hub South Florida. I was,
Yes.
if you have students here like that, they're owning their career by participating. Like, I think it's a standout. It's a real standout thing to kind of be out in the community and showing your interest and passion for what you do. That's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
So on the tech side, I wanted to add very quickly, if you're entry level on the tech side, code, like we have the saying, part of my friendship, build shit, right? It's like do things, put them on your GitHub, so that gives you an edge. Don't just tell me you use React.js or Java. Show me how you use Java in a project and put the code publicly so I can see it. It doesn't need to be pristine or perfect, but it gives you some sort of experience. And then to add to what Nikki and Diane was saying, not only that when you volunteer, you can put that in your resume, you also meet people that can get you a job, right? The networking effect of that is so great when you're in those places. Just by putting yourself in that position gives you a leg up. That might be the person who's going to interview you next. And just because you went to SoFlo DevCon and volunteer there, that should definitely be in a resume if you did. Then the person's like, oh, I was at SoFlo DevCon. It's like, you probably saw me. That gives you that rapport that we're talking about, doing your research and tie that in, talk about the event for a few seconds. And building rapport with the interviewer could go a great way into getting you hired. Yeah. Because at this level, most people have the same skill, right? So those things differentiate you ever little and gives you an edge over the competition.
Fantastic. I love that. And then for the tips, oh, and Lexi and Diane, your advice is better than anything else. So if you want to add to that, okay, you're good. All right, just wanted to give you that opportunity. Okay, so for the tips, they're very straightforward and everyone will be able to read them. They were submitted by the panelists here. So you'll have the opportunity to review these in the presentation that I send out. So here they are. I will, again, share these so that you can see them. And then that way you can reference them long-term as well. But I am going to jump right into the questions. And I know that Diane and Nikki have already provided their LinkedIn. So if we don't get to it, let me know, or panelists, if you want to, answer them via chat as well. I'm sure that that would be great. But definitely for those on this call, if you do have questions that aren't answered, please just let us follow up and we will go from there. But T-Bear commented what to do if the interviewer is not honest. I have had 3 interviews with the same company, first 2 for one position, and then they said it was closed, and then they ghosted me for another month.
Walk away.
Red flag.
Yeah, walk away.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the interview itself is a two-way street. It's a lot about them learning about you. No one's doing you a favor. You skilled, right? And also you learning about them. It's kind of skewed towards on their way. A lot of times people feel like, oh, they're gonna give me a paycheck, so you feel like they have some sort of sway, and they ask you all the questions, only leaving 5 minutes in the end for you to question them, which I find to be completely biased. Right? Because it's like dating, right? You just go and ask the person a whole bunch of questions, like, okay, fine, you get the job, you get to be my girlfriend. No, you don't do this, right? That's a biased relationship. So I know the industry is kind of skewed like this, but it's an indication as to what kind of culture you're going to be participating in, and do you want to be part of that company, right?
I'd love that.
Yeah. And I don't know too. So just one rule of thumb I always kind of had, when I was in talent placement, and there's some exceptions to this rule, but basically I look at it as if you're, entry level, mid-level management, or higher tier management, right? You should have that many interviews on average. So and I don't count, the first initial HR, because they always do a lot of initial screening and that type of thing. So don't count that one. But if you're entry level role and you're doing 6 interview sessions, red flag, walk away. If you are in higher tier level C-suite and they're doing 1, I might ask for another one. You might want to actually meet more of the team. So that's kind of just how I always went, is kind of that 1, 2, 3, depending on what stage you're at. And it may be 2, or it may be, 1 below or above. But if you're sitting in, 5, 6, 7 interviews, or you're entry level and you're sitting there in your 6th interview, it's like, why? There's a broken process. And to me, that is a huge red flag. So I don't know if you guys agree with me, Diane, Lexi, and Darie, but that's just always something I used when I was in staffing, for people that would say, look, I'm on my 5th interview, or they haven't gotten back to me. It's been 2 months. This whole process is, if it's taking that long, look at the tier you're in, as far as again, entry level, middle management, and higher. And if it's taking more than that average, that's a huge red flag.
Yeah. I agree with both Nikki and Darie. I'll add another layer to it. It really it depends on what's happening internally within the company as well. And you're not privy to that information, unfortunately. And a lot of the times, what I've seen on my end from an HR perspective, well, first of all, it's probably chaotic. If they have time to take to respond to you, they're probably moving at a fast pace. They probably don't have processes in place. It could be that they're trying to streamline things. They're probably all over the place. And that's an indicator to the point made earlier. But the other thing too is sometimes it's not about you specifically. It may have been that they actually, got the directive to close the role, right? They maybe had already extended an offer to a candidate, had accepted it, didn't communicate that to you, and then poof, the person might have left, or maybe they've opened up another head count with the same title and is posted again 4 months later. So those are the stories that you don't get. So it's really just dependent upon the fact of your own personal experience, like Darie said, like Nikki said, is that based off my experience, is that a company I want to be engaged with? If it's a company that you feel very strongly about and you apply again and you do land an interview, don't be afraid to ask them the tough question of, hey, I had applied for this originally and I didn't hear back. What happened? Because you might be surprised with the feedback. Could be something internal. Oh, we were waiting on this and we had to close the roll down unexpectedly or something like that. It could be anything. So, but I would only say double back like that only if it's a role that you really, like your dream job or something. Like you just love, gotta work there. You dream about it at night.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
great.
We say that all the time, and what you said, Darie, it is a two-way process too. So we as a company really have to remember that these candidates are interviewing us as much as that we're interviewing them, and and really striving to make sure we deliver good candidate experiences. It is not easy though, and especially when you're like, there's always some kind of chaos happening somewhere, especially when you're going quickly. And so I think kind of assuming like positive intent, trying not to take it too personally, but also it's a good indication of like, do you really want to work there too?
Mm-hmm.
How they treat you through the interview process is really indicative of how we treat our team members.
Yeah.
And so it is, it is good information for you to have.
Yeah. And I think also, Diane, I'm sure you've probably gotten people to ask this, but not being afraid to whoever you're interviewing with or talking to ask them, how long can I expect, feedback, or who should I expect that from? Or can I ask contact information of somebody I can follow up with? Because I think a lot of people are scared to ask that, but definitely make sure you do get contact information, know who to follow up with, timeframes.
Don't be afraid to reach out, ask questions, follow up, things like that. I think it shows your interest. It shows like you're taking it seriously. And if a company is serious about that, doing great work, they want people who are serious about doing great work, so I think it's great.
I'd love that.
Yeah, Nikki just read my mind on this. Be always ask, especially the recruiter in the beginning, what is the time frame? What's the interview process like? When can I expect to get back? Good or bad? And to that, I would also add, I love your measure of how many interviews, Nikki, to have with the entry level to like sort of C-suite, unless it's big tech. If you're entry, you're still getting 7 interviews. It doesn't matter. The process is just the same. It's ridiculous. I hate it. Everybody hate it. But if you want to get paid the big bucks, that's sort of what you have to do, right? So for my tech people, this is mostly true. Unless you're gonna do thing, then sure, all bets are off.
I love that. So we are a couple minutes over. I know that the panelists, again, proactively answered Damien's question about when to get back and if you're not hearing. So if you haven't heard back, take their advice and send that note to say, what's the process like? Is there anything else I can provide? And things along those lines. So I will be sure to send all of this information out. So thankful for everyone, the panelists. You guys have been absolutely phenomenal. For the attendees to taking time on your Friday afternoon lunch break or study break. I know it's final season. So I think that is really commendable. And as Diane mentioned, being involved with Tech Hub and showing initiative and what you've attended is always something great to include. And that could even be, if it's not something official, that you could say, what you may not see on my interview is that I've been very active in finding ways to participate and getting knowledge and information. And that's something that I continue to want to do throughout my time and career. And I think those things really hit it on the head. I will hand it over. Panelists, would you like to give any other advice? I know that you all have provided your LinkedIn information, so I will encourage all panelists take advantage of that. They are all phenomenal resources, and I'm sure, as you can tell, are interested in helping and very open to giving back and helping as well.
So last words, you said?
If you wanted to say anything or anything I didn't touch on.
Sure. I wish we did a great conversation. We think we get to talk about career negotiation, salary negotiation.
Oh my gosh, we did not.
I think anything around talent, we could break this out into like 5 different talks.
Yeah. I would
I
say
did
always
know-
negotiate, okay? Always negotiate. The worst I could say is no. Okay, I'll leave you with that.
And
It
also
is never the
too,
best offer, never the best
and
offer.
in the presentation, Darie provided excellent information on negotiations that is key. And if you do have those specific questions, Darie is a wonderful resource, and definitely connect on LinkedIn if you have any questions as well specifically. But these are really good, solid tips to follow. So definitely take a look at those as well. Okay. Thank you all so much for attending. Have a wonderful weekend.
Bye,
Thanks,
guys.
everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.